All right, everybody. Welcome to another live stream with Global Conservation Force. I have the pleasure of having Anthony Porter on today. Anthony is one of our ambassadors for the crew. Anthony, welcome, dude.
Hey, Mike. Yeah, thanks for having me. I just got back from Africa last week, so it was cool. I met some people I think you know too, so I'm happy to talk about that.
Epic. Yeah, so we have a couple big dates coming now. We're on that side of the year where World Ranger Day, July 31st, is coming. So, Anthony, now after being on a reserve or multiple reserves, how daunting do you think it feels to run rhino conservation when you're looking at that kind of landscape?
Dude, what you guys do, I have such a newfound respect for it. I mean, honestly, like the fact that there is such adversity in whether it's local government, like local folks, like you generally have like such a simple, effective mission, and like the pushback you guys get, and like just the pure support you guys get from people that are just down to earth and want to help. Like it's just, there's like a lot of things in the world that are like so morally gray. There's nothing morally gray about like saving rhinos. So it's such an easy thing to get behind. And now seeing that firsthand, man, I don't know. It's just like I want to move there and just do that full time. Like it's so, I don't know how to say it, man, but you probably feel that same like call to be like, yeah, obviously that's the clear thing to do. Um, but yeah, no, I'm more invested. That's what I would say. Yeah, I got to the Zululand area. Then I went to like some smaller game reserves that are just trying to get more on the up and up.
Yeah,
Trying to see Zululand's example. So it's really rad to see really what you've inspired as well in local communities.
it's a complex issue, right? I'm sure you got to see. Obviously, there's a lot of poverty, which is one of the big, like, I don't know, um, catalysts involved in conservation, because poverty usually is on the side of rural landscapes. But at the same time, we're fortunate to be expanding, the jobs in the conservation landscape with including those folks from the closest community. So, did you get to see wild rhino on your trip?
I did. And the fascinating thing was the game reserves that I went to, they said, obviously, they had signs like for all the people that were coming to this area, like, please do not post photos of the rhinos. Like, do not
Yes.
tag locations. Like,
Yes.
we're super proud of the fact that we have rhinos, but you are not the person that should be explaining because, I mean, yeah, poachers use social media just as much as anybody else does, if not more. And
They feel
that was wild for me to think about. Like, I
I
can't
do.
share like my rhino photos. So I've been sharing everything else. Um, and I haven't really shared where my location is because I told people that I did see rhinos. So it's it's uh it's cool. I did see a few rhinos and it was beautiful. There was one final day that we were doing a safari at like our like sunset safari. The people in my crew were like, we didn't see like a really good rhino. Like we saw them from like far away and we're like, oh look, they're like ambling away. But um I had this huge telescopic like photo lens and I was looking around with it and everyone's like, oh my God, it's right there. I'm like looking around with it. And if you're too zoomed in, you can't see crap. It was like right in front of our car. So, yeah, we got to see a mom and the baby, which is really, really rad.
That's super cool. I think you just hit one of the biggest, like, traveler tips that we talk about, for anybody going on holiday or safari. When you're in a sensitive location for specific wildlife, uh, rhino probably the best example, and then pangolin as well. Uh, Turning off your location services on your devices, so any of your data transmitting devices, which can include your watches. So if you're doing like tracking and you're watching your steps and it links with your phone, you can have data in your photos, right? And that can be stripped, and organized criminals actually find that data and utilize it for more exact details on species they want. But more commonly, obviously, organized poachers and the rhino link of all the systems there are organized, and they know what they're doing. So they use a lot of resources, and the free, cheap, fast resources. trying to figure out through hashtags if someone made the mistake of tagging a rhino in a location and then using the landscape of that photo to figure it out.
Isn't
Um,
that wild?
yeah, and then you have other things like um, you notice that people will post rhinos with horns in some locations, which is even scarier with just the activity. So generally speaking, like from GCF side, when we post even different locations, we will only show dehorned rhinos and the metadata is off on that stuff. And then we've been very careful about timing, place, and it's never live. It's always delayed. That's another thing that's important. But
Mm.
you would never know that a simple photo on your vacation could cause potentially that rhino's life.
Yeah, it's wild. Do you have anything that you want to share since your last trip there? You were just there, what, a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, I just got back and I head back here in just a little while. Uh, that basically what we were working on the last trip was we actually had a lot of different guests visit different locations where we work, and that was pretty fun. But then at the same time we were closing out some patrol ranger training activities, checking up on some canines, and then working in Zooland with one of our main partners, which is Zooland Conservation Trust. And
Mm.
so we had a lot of fun. One of the biggest things that came out of it was ourselves and our partners Asosa, we helped finish the funding for a new BOMA space for one of the blind white rhino orphans.
Whoa.
Um, and so now he's pretty much non-releasable, so he's requiring more space and more dedicated care, while also at the same time there's an influx in activity, obviously in the KZN province. So in the KZN province, that means that there are more rhino orphans. So our partners at the Zululand Rhino Orphanage are taking on more baby rhinos, and so from last year October to now, we ramped up our efforts with them to help them expand uh, and support their expansion of care. So with that, that new BOMA space helps them shuffle more of the maturing groups of orphan cats as they come in, stabilize, go into bottle, and then go on to reintroduction. So that was probably our biggest last month, alongside taking out 222 snares in a specific section.
I saw
Uh,
the videos of that. You were like stacking them on posts, right? With like miles of it.
yeah,
Wow.
so we were working with our partners at Tac Track, specifically Jeffrey, and we were targeting an area that he has set up for his anti-poaching unit to like go through more regularly. The reason I'm not mentioning it is because we will be back, and we also collectively have put little long lines on our commercial poachers that are in there. So we're
Mm.
following up, and in the coming weeks or months, we're planning our, I guess, our intervention, if you will. So that said, there's going to be more activity in that space pretty soon. Um, but snaring is another good topic as we come into Ranger Day, which is, again, for those watching, that's July 31st. And World Ranger Day is really important to note. I love me and my friends that are game rangers. Those are the people that drive you around on safari. However, those are not your field rangers. Those are not your
Hmm.
anti-poaching rangers. Um, Rangers have a death toll annually, usually 50 to 100 around the world in protecting wildlife spaces. And what's scary about that is that it can be everything from illegal logging activity and illegal mining to obviously armed poachers like rhino poachers. That said, the environment that rangers work in is most commonly their highest risk daily, specifically wildlife when you work in places around Africa. So, World Ranger Day is celebrating the fallen heroes and those who wear the green uniform every day to protect all these wild places and spaces. um, so snare poaching. Snare poaching is one of the most common forms of poaching around the world, and that's because of its ease of use and its kind of set and forget situation. You can set multiple. Um, for the baseline, snare poaching is basically set up more for folks in the basic side, just trying to put food on the table. However, where we in it like where we have to come in a lot more organized fashion is when you have routine what we call commercial poachers, or they're technically another form of organized poachers, where they're killing hundreds of animals with snares and selling that as a illegal meat market. And then there's also the same parallel with those who are selling muti de sangomas, which is wildlife parts for traditional medicines or potions and concoctions of that sort. Um, so in that is very common as well. But those tend to not be your, lesser box species. Those tend to be things like lions, vultures, and unique critters around that people are trying to get specific parts for because they have a specific purpose in that. So snare poaching is actually a big deal to talk about. Um, I think the other thing to talk about with snare poaching is a lot of folks underestimate the danger that they can be in when dealing with snare poachers. These guys commonly know the bush, and they definitely know the wildlife, and so that means they know how to get in and around these areas very quickly or quietly, and they don't want to give up their resources. So just like every other style of intervention with illegal wildlife poaching, you can get into some pretty serious situations with them if you're not prepared. So it's not just like hey, there's a kid setting a snare and go talk to him about it, which that can happen. It can be, I bumped into a group of three like bush savvy dudes with knives and pangas and potentially a gun. And now we're having to be a lot more careful about what we're doing. And there might only be two rangers doing a snare sweep. So um, everything you do in the space when it comes to wildlife protection is it should be well trained, and it should be well equipped, and it should be well planned out. So yeah, did you get a chance to see and meet any rangers in the field?
Uh, yeah. So there was one ranger. Um, so like you were talking about, there's actually safari rangers, right? And so those are the ones that are like, oh guys, look, that's a crested whatever. And like as you're going through and they're taking you on the safari trip. Um, but it was interesting. Those rangers, super knowledgeable and ecologic, like great information. They there were a lot of anti-poaching patrollers at the reserve that I was at. And they basically were told, the rangers in the safari were told to not show those people to us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they're like, listen, they're doing patrols uh, constantly at every given time. And it's funny because they're like, please, guys, don't get out of the vehicles. Like, there's a lot of wild animals out here. The patrollers are like, I don't know, in shoes, like, and holding machete, just walking around. Like, it was a totally different vibe. But yeah, it was interesting. Like, they were kind of, the lodge was like kind of protecting us from seeing the anti-poaching efforts, which honestly, like, I would have paid extra, to watch and be a part of that. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
That's a really good point. So you hit a funny button for me.
Uh
I
huh.
personally strongly disagree with the lodges that hide their rangers, and some game drives, specifically the game ranger is actually trying to avoid them or may not want to show them at all. I think that rangers of all types should be ambassadors, and I think that they have a strong community and strong public connection as long as
Mm-hmm.
they're comfortable being having dialogue with guests, and they're, let's say that they're even trained so they know how to speak and handle those questions with the guests, because sometimes guests ask wild questions.
Yeah.
um, I think that it really the anti-poaching rangers should have the opportunity to speak more often, and I think that they should have the opportunity to chat with guests and not have to hide all the time. It is very much an old mentality. We work with reserves where from the lodge side they want the anti-poaching rangers to be completely hidden at all times, and certain lodge managers make huge fusses about it if the guests saw them, but the guests are always so excited to see them. And then we work with reserves and lodges where you can actually schedule a visit and you can meet them in the field and see a demonstration. And that has an extremely powerful connection for the guests. And the
Yeah.
rangers are so stoked because they want to show off either what they're doing, talk about it, or answer questions about what it's like to sleep and live and work in the bush. So I personally, that's funny you mentioned that. I personally don't like it when reserves and lodge teams enforce that on the security teams.
Yeah, fascinating. Um, but yeah, and then I went to the Zooland, and it was funny because like I didn't have any idea like where I was really at, and you told me like, yeah, trust me, dude, the reserve you're at is hours away from the Zooland Reserve. I'm like, all right, cool. And then I got to the reserve, and I was like, oh, I'm actually at the spot where I chatted with the whole Zooland Rhino conservation folks last time we talked.
Yeah,
Um,
well, that's live.
yeah, I was on our last live. And I met one of the what was one of the rangers' name? Julian. You know the oh, it was actually surprising a lot of ladies, which is really cool. The lodge I was at, they were apparently that I asked Julian actually about that lodge. He's like, yeah, they are very traditional. They do not hire female rangers at all. All of the female staff will be like doing housekeeping and like administrative stuff, but all only men are in the field, and we're not a fan of that. Like we use everybody. And I really like that philosophy. And yeah, I was actually on the plane with the manager of Zululand's girlfriend, and I can't. God, I wish I remembered their names, but just and as soon as I got onto the Zululand Reserve, because that is a combination of how many lodges? It's like 6 or 7 lodges.
I think it's 8 actually. Yeah.
8?
Yeah.
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 Um, and that was really cool to see because the guy that I was asking about him, he's like, yeah, I've been here for 11 years, and everyone had their own little private game reserves, and they had their like signature animals. And then I don't know what amount of certain years ago they decided to just break down all the gates, combine all of them, and make this incredibly massive 50,000 ish
Yeah.
hectares or
I think it's
acres.
26 is 26,000 hectares. So that's what,
Okay,
like, that's just about 48, 50,000 yeah, 50,000 acres and some
dude,
change. Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, and then so I asked the guy, I was like, in the future, what would you want to see even more happen? I was sitting right next to him, just asking him question after question. He's
Public
like, well, honestly, I see a lot of really good stuff. There's a lot of collaboration. The dude to the north of us has the same size as all of ours combined, and he is doing his own thing. He charges like 3 times more, so I don't think we're ever going to like kind of collab. But he said the interesting thing is there's some commercial or some residential opportunities that people have been using for that area, and so now
Mhm.
there's personal vehicles going out into these safaris, which he's not super stoked on, which is super understandable.
Yeah.
Um, especially when there's like such hotspot refuges for these animals, you don't want to just have these folks that can buy homes and drive their own Subarus around it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Have you experienced stuff like that?
Yeah, so we work in a lot of that complex, I guess, zone of conservation where so Mignoni used to be several private spots that were, broken up, and now they've merged into one reserve managed by the Zooland Conservation Trust, and the goal is expanding habitat, and we're excited to actually be working with our partners there on that as well. There's some key spaces that they hope to expand and drop fence lines in, and which would then make the reserve larger. One of the challenges that Mignoni Game Reserve has itself is that there is a public road that goes through it. So the hope
Mm,
is over time that they can purchase what now is presently agricultural land outside of the reserve, and then essentially erase the need for that road to be anywhere near public access, so they don't
mm.
have public transport, like, because they're technically by law it is a public accessible road, but it goes right down the middle of the reserve. um,
Oh,
there are a lot of reserves that have that issue because when they started and it was a public space on one side and they merged into this other space, it makes it very challenging for wildlife protection, and so does the complexity of multiple landowners. There are these community chairs, so for example, like Karen, who was with us on last time,
hmm,
she has to work through kind of like columns of boards and committees, because it's to get a reserve that big, people are putting their private land into one reserve space, and who pays for what and how much, and then who's responsible for what. So it's very challenging, but it's working. And specifically, when it comes to expanding reserves, instead of having the island nation effect of a tiny bunch of little reserves, you get one big reserve, and then all of a sudden the ecosystem's a lot healthier, and actually the joint resources are a lot stronger and more sustainable, especially if you
Yeah.
have successful lodges and multiple of them.
Yeah,
So,
it's like if we can get administratively out of our own way, it is so much more beneficial. I mean, how much has the ecosystem boosted in that area since the fence has gone down to make it one giant area? So
oh, dramatic. It's dramatic.
crazy.
I mean, it used to be a lot of that whole area used to actually be ag. So like what you were seeing used to be, I think it was chili and pineapple and like some type of textile and sugar.
Huh.
There was like, so if you were to flash back 30 years ago, there was probably a wildlife space of a couple hundred acres, to which then fast forward now, it's thousands of acres of rewilded habitat that was originally damaged by agriculture. So I know
Yeah.
the owners of Leopard Lodge are the ones who could tell the best version of that story, because they've been part of the journey with their family the whole time at Mignoni. But it's not a unique story to the space of conservation. There's actually quite a few places like that, where
Man.
it was degraded agriculture land over the last, let's say 200, 300, 400 years in some spaces. And then in the last 30 to 50 years, someone was like, well, what if we were to put wildlife back on it and let us do its
Yeah.
thing? And then like kind of like a natural progression into becoming a wildlife reserve. Um, but so for those tuning in, I see a lot of folks coming in again. I see we have a couple questions or comments. Uh,
Yeah. Mr. Crow Spider says, "Hello, love your channel. Thanks. Today we're talking about wildlife conservation. So anytime you have questions about how these folks, so we're with the Global Conservation Force, they're making sure that those animals that you love are not poached, anti-poaching units, mainly in Africa, but across the planet. Can I say that?
You can actually, because we do work in 26 countries,
Heck
and
yeah.
we are in Central America and Asia. Right now, we don't have any, I guess, land-based, boot on the ground projects in South America formally, but we are working with partners in South America as well.
Love it. So yeah, folks, if you have any questions in the chat about what wildlife conservation is like, I mean, it's a highly dangerous but high stakes, very high reward kind of thing. Leave it in the comments. Happy to answer it. More appropriately, I will look in the comments and ask Mike what what's all about. Um,
So I think a big note here is for everybody jumping on. World Ranger Day is July 31st, and World Ranger Day is for the men and women wearing the uniforms, protecting and surveying the world's wild spaces and places, and that's all around the world. Unfortunately, rangers do uh, sacrifice the ultimate, I guess, they pay the highest price that can be paid at times because of the type of work, and it's dangerous and in many different habitats, not just because of poachers. It can be a wide variety of illegal activities, and unfortunately there's not as many rangers as we would like in every place of the world, and not all rangers have all the support that they need. So when we're talking about World Ranger Day, we're jumping on to not only hit the common topics about it, but kind of hit some of the background chats. And that leads us to fast forward World Rhino Day. I just realized this is saying both on either here, so let's just fix that. So World Ranger Day is July 31st, and World Rhino Day is September 22nd. And we have a big campaign that we run on the regular, and we call it the Rhino Conservation Challenge. Uh, Anthony, I believe you were signing up for that at some point.
yeah,
And
I'm in. I don't. I gotta set up my whole crew and stuff and make sure that I can do it. I mean, I'll be around, but yes, I'll totally do it. I'm in.
sweet. So the Rhino Conservation Challenge is you can find it in any of our channels, and you can find it on our website. It's under our events. The Rhino Conservation Challenge is giving you the opportunity to be a fundraiser, host your own team, and for several weeks, rally funds. And if you become the top fundraising member with everybody underneath you and your team, you could come out in the field with us at GCF. So there's a 2 spot for folks going on safari. And then there's also a volunteer experience learning how to take care of orphan baby rhinos at the Zululand Rhino Orphanage. And then we do have a third place that we just haven't put up yet, and that's actually go with GCF instructors on a professional development program. So that will be coming through the works, and there's more than one way to get involved. There's more than one way to fundraise. But again, this is coming up. World Ranger Day is the first opening day. World Rhino Day is the last day to fundraise on that. And the importance here is GCF works heavily in rhino conservation in Africa and Asia. Our conservation efforts do reach all 5 currently described living species of rhino. And that's important to note that we don't only work on the ground in these countries where the last remaining populations are. We are working in the demand markets. We're working in counter wildlife trafficking, and we're working in key hub network spots where there's cross traffic of different kinds of syndicate, illegal poaching activity and or sales. Dismantling networks are working to disrupt the chain. So we work on a very holistic, boots on the ground in many different spots. And today I'm stoked to have Anthony with us. For anybody who's on, Anthony is a GCF ambassador with a background in wildlife education. And you want to talk about what fun we have coming for you after the Rhino Conservation Challenge?
Oh man, yeah, totally, guys. So if you want to get your hands dirty at all, that's totally awesome. There's also opportunities to just do ecotourism, and I am going to be hosting a trip going down to Costa Rica. And the price of admission goes directly to conservation and anti-poaching efforts around the country or around the world. And we're just going to go adventure in Costa Rica, which is going to be super rad. There's a huge itinerary already planned out. There's people already signed up. So I think we've got, like 5 spots left?
I think 4.
4 spots left.
Yeah, 4 spots left.
It's really rad. If you want to literally go into the middle of the jungle with me, this is your time to shine. You can DM me later if you're following me through this, and I can send you all the information. Or you could check out Global Conservation Force's website, and it has a lot of different offerings. If you're not available to do one in the middle of February, there's more, right? There's even more other than that.
Absolutely. So we have a whole list of ecotours. The ecotours, for anybody watching, those are trips where you stay in nice accommodation and you go into wild spaces, and then you work on impact projects or visit impact projects of ours. But then if you are looking to be like more hands-on, we have our professional development courses, which those are more like getting your feet dirty and your hands dirty, getting out there and learning the work and doing the work with us and seeing which avenue of conservation suits you best, or just putting more feathers in your cap so you can be a lot more ready for what we go into in the field. And yeah, so Costa Rica, this trip's pretty cool, as all of them are. They are all going to the Osa Peninsula, and the Osa Peninsula is like the wild spot of Costa Rica. It does not have the volume of guests and traffic that the rest of the country does get, which is really nice because when you're doing wildlife sightings, you're not in a group of like 40 or 50 people. So Costa Rica has a big ecotourism market, but we are working to grow it into a more holistic realm with lodges that aren't getting as much traffic in a quieter realm of the country, but a more active wildlife part of the country. And then funds from this trip help support community conservation education outreach in local communities, as well as sustain jobs for those who only get part-time employment because of short seasons for tourists visiting. And then it also is going to be put into our fund to help our partners in Costa Rica expand habitat, because right now there's 3 sections of fragmented habitat that have an endangered species of spider monkey on them. and they are the only primate, or the only, I guess, mammal species that won't use man-made devices to cross habitat spaces. So these are becoming genetic
Mm,
islands, and they're becoming isolated corridor sections that are chopped, where family members have been separated from others based off of agriculture, construction projects, development projects. And so it's a very unique challenge for that specific region, but one that's not uncommon in the world of conservation. So going on the trip, there's a lot to do. But yeah, it's going to be a cool trip.
man,
Um, Lots
it's
of impact.
exciting. I think it's like genuinely there's so many ways that people are just like, I just want to go travel. I want to go like the middle of Brazil or whatever that adventure is. And the fact that you offer areas to go to that not only you help when you're there, but your funding helps sustain that tourism, like you said, even when it's not full time, because that's how we show value to the government. That's how we show value to all these different stakeholders that keeping nature intact is way more profitable for them because that's more so what they care about than turning it into a palm oil field or a cotton plantation. So this is
Exactly.
this is it. I mean, if you folks are ever interested in helping the world out, it doesn't have to be grueling, awful stuff. You can adventure and just put your money into adventure that promotes more nature, and that's really what we can do as like citizens.
Yeah. Um, so let's pivot real quick. Anthony, are you game to ever go through ranger training?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think about that all the time. I think about that every time I go to the gym. I like as I'm working out, I'm like, is this the right muscle group I should do to like keep up with the Rangers? I'm like, probably not. But I will say I also live at altitude, so I'm at like 7,000 feet doing my runs and stuff, and I feel better about that. But I don't know. I'm like super ready for it. I'm always intimidated if I'm ready physically for it, but I feel like I am at any given time. But I don't know. I just don't know. But yes, put me in. I'm in, coach.
So I think that you would do well, honestly.
Cool.
So for anybody on the GCF side listening right now, Anthony, American Ninja Warrior background,
Yeah.
as well as avid outdoorsman. I see you jumping around and hiking all the time. I personally think you'd be just fine, honestly.
Thanks, man. Well, maybe if I do well on that, you can come to my woods and we can do some trainings together and you can do my stuff.
I would love to. Honestly, I like so ranger training. We obviously put everybody through a really rough go through.
I bet.
I can't understate that enough. Like, just because, like, I don't know, it's through us. It's there's not going to be any like easier version of it. I guess is the best way to say it. In fact, we're probably harder than um, many in the aspect of what we train you on. But
Wow.
the realistic environment training and physical training is targeted at what you actually need. So the way you work out actually is the closest version you can be doing to what we do. It's the
Glad to hear
most
it.
natural version because and this is what's usually funny. Like, there's not usually weightlifting equipment in the bush, and there's no fancy machines to go train on. It's like weight, distance, your body weight, and the environment around you, and how can you train and get around. And then for us, more effectively, how can you be more safe by developing different body muscle groups, and how can you like how are you not going to get an injury from X, Y, and Z? So
Yeah. That's cool. I think my biggest challenge, like my brain, this is the biggest fear I always have every time is you basically work on a nocturnal, like super non-diurnal schedule, right?
yeah, a
That's
lot.
I think is the brutal part for me. And I don't know, share like what that is for you. Are you cool with it at this point?
Yeah, so I have a weird sleep pattern because of because of the work. Also, when I'm not in the bush, uh, I'm still responding to calls and messages and planning and activities on that timeline. So when let's say I come to the US to do admin and fundraising and presenting, I'm still talking to everybody on either side for GCF Project World, whether that's Asia or Africa. So uh, when I'm in when I'm in the bush in Southern Africa or East Africa, um, we work to the pressure of the timeline in that habitat. So that means like full moon week, we're going to be up from like more so 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. And that's the higher activity timeline for rhino poaching. But there's going to be daytime activities too because you have to do sweeps and checks and whatnot. So
Mhm.
you have to swap from like night shift and then go back into day shift and then night shift and then day shift. And then sometimes you're on day shift and things happen at night and that's like the first day. And it can be 21 days straight and your sleep patterns like 4 hours here, 2 hours there, five over here. And
Man.
you have to learn to sleep like a cat because of like the variables. Um, let alone sometimes it's the safety. Sometimes you have to move because of weather. Sometimes you have to move because of animals.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I've gotten used to it by now. I think the hardest thing I have to do is like doing a full night's sleep when nothing's going on because my brain tells me there's always something going on. So
That's really cool to me. That, like, sleep by necessity only, and you can't really even do that. I mean, that means you're doing good work.
it's
Um,
busy.
all
It's
right. Well, real quick before I want to ask more questions about that, but
sure.
Crow Spider asks, does the GCF also protect carnivores like lions, leopards, and cheetahs?
Great question, and yes, we do. Just because GCF doesn't have them as a title project species, the reason we have our title species is each one represents a poaching crisis type and a habitat area. So rhinos and elephants provide the umbrella protection for our lion, leopard, and cheetah based areas. We do have some cheetah specific projects. So we did habitat expansion with our partners at Carrick Foundation. And we also built a cheetah reintroduction boma, which has now reestablished a cheetah population, breeding population onto the Karika Game Reserve. So it's cheetah specifically there, as well as tracking collars with multiple partners, camera traps with multiple partners, and then removing snares in and outside of
Mm,
reserves in hundreds of locations, which actually do end up catching lions, leopards, and cheetahs quite regularly, depending on the
yeah.
location. So yes, we do. Our biggest swaths for them, luckily, because they're not generally specifically targeted in the areas we are most common. It's our holistic, overarching support that provides them safe habitat and space. But I will say we do have some targeted projects coming up for Lion as well. And we are going to be taking in some new ranger recruits who are going to be trained under the GCF umbrella so that they can go back to their home reserves and help tackle issues that they're dealing with that are directly targeting lions.
Beautiful. I was told that no one, like, on these game reserves, you have kind of like ownership of certain animals, right? Like, you have tallies and such.
Mhm.
And when it comes to, I think it's leopards, there no one owns a leopard. Is that right?
So they're
Like,
seen
leopards
as
are super.
yeah, they're kind of like leopards and jackals. I mean, you can quote buy a leopard and put it onto a game reserve, but leopards don't pay attention to fence lines like African painted dogs, and same with a couple other critters like warthogs. They come in and out all the time.
Yeah.
Um, Unfortunately, in many spaces, the biggest issues that leopard are facing is that human wildlife conflict, age old competition between livestock and cats, and they're blamed for many things that actually certain other species are doing, but leopard are as well because obviously if opportunistic and there's an easy opportunity. Um, so they are seen as a nuisance animal in many locations, which sucks because people and more on the agriculture and farming side will try to shoot them on sight, and
Yeah.
that's if they come out of a reserve. And so, but in reserves, you have a variety of different things. There are even like certain ways to set snares and or gin traps or both, so that they can like get a leopard for its skin. So we're used
Now,
to doing all that.
when I was there a couple weeks ago, the lodge I was at, basically the evolution of it went from, of course, it was wildlands. They cut it down to be, I think it was a cotton plantation. Cotton into, then they changed it to a hunting reserve, a hunting lodge.
Hmm.
And then I think in 2011 or 14 or something like that, they stopped hunting altogether and found out it was more lucrative to just keep them alive and just work on like ecological stuff to make it an actual like game reserve. Um, Now, I saw that as kind of like a really cool evolution of seeing the value of a land in that area. I mean, in a perfect world, would there be that same kind of evolution, or I guess what capacity would you have in your happy world of like zero trophy hunting? Because I know it raises a crap ton of money for certain things. However, there's
The
the
ethics.
yeah, exactly.
So I think personally, what I'd like to see is there needs to be a better balance between land distribution and ownership that benefits wildlife directly.
Mm,
Um, One thing that's unique about that evolution chain you're talking about, that is not uncommon. So what's happening in a lot of locations is land that was used for whatever goes up for sale. Someone purchases it with the idea of either rewilding it to a basic, like what we would call like a lesser game species reserve, or
mm,
some people buy it as is with lesser game on it and they want to introduce megafauna and carnivores to it. Now, in the perfect world, if you could have enough land and enough space to maintain healthy populations of wildlife and let them do their thing, that would be great. I honestly, that would be great. If you could own enough land in these spaces, wildlife continues to breed, so that's a challenge.
mm-hmm.
And we obviously know, like, so there's genetics management for who's related to what, and then there's spatial management for how many of each was going on in the ecology of each reserve. um, I would say that in the healthier system, truly, if there was no trophy hunting, I would be happy with it. I do see trophy hunting reserves in the middle of nowhere. I don't know how they would get tourism. I'm sure they could work on it. But
Oh,
that's
I
also
see.
why we work with so many places that are really ethical, strong reserve management bodies and lodges to bring in more tourism so it's sustainable from just the tourism side. Then the tourism side supports that whole ecosystem of wildlife protection without the paid hunting version of conservation.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I didn't think about that. Like people that do want to go hunt, they go into the middle of absolute nowhere where maybe tourism isn't technically like feasible as much. Is that what you're
Mhm.
saying?
Yeah,
Huh.
so if you listen to local landowners in Africa talking about their challenges, um, again, this is just me echoing what they've said, and I've been in many of these conversations where we're working towards the goal of what we just talked about, working towards a wildlife reserve, no hunting for trophies, sustainable land, sustainable lodge situation. You'll hear that, yeah, but um, an aging bull of this species, let's say a Cape buffalo, uh, it's going to get gored or killed by another buffalo, or it's going to get taken out by the lions eventually, and it's going to kind of slowly starve away. Or we can, once we see that's happening, someone can pay to shoot it, and we don't get enough lodge traffic here to sustain it the other way. I understand their initial justification of what they're trying to say for the complications of sustaining income, but also once off sale rarely is going to keep anything afloat, even if it's big dollar. My biggest, I guess, argument point is not enough of that money coming in is going into conservation and into the community spaces and expanding the reserve or expanding the
Mm,
program space. So that's what I've seen most regularly. I see the trophy hunter companies with very expensive vehicles,
yeah.
very expensive toys, very basic and not necessarily the most advanced trained anti-poaching units. I'm saying this with a lot of generalism, so this is not everybody, but
Yeah.
generally speaking, I'm not seeing the most advanced versions of wildlife protection and conservation out of those spaces.
Yeah, that makes. I mean, that's logical sense of how that would go. Um, Interesting. Okay, we got a question from same dude, Crow Spider. What kind of weapons do you use in your patrols? That's a great question. It'll get me back on the questions of how can I train to be a better anti-poacher. So
All right, cool. So let's start with Anthony first. So Anthony, if you wanted to become a ranger, you can go to our website, travel with us, professional development courses, and our next anti-poaching unit training is here in August.
oh,
So
nice.
if you are looking to do this, there's also a blog on our website to understand what this means. Like, what is it to be an anti-poaching ranger or a field ranger, as it's better known in the industry? Okay, let's come back to the question now. The weapons depends on the type of region or country you're in, and that depends on what the weapons laws are. Most teams in Southern Africa are using a repeating semi-automatic rifle. Um, so there's R1s, there's AR-15s or AR-15 platforms, and then there are AK platforms. A lot of canine handlers are using a sidearm like a Glock. That's probably one of the more common ones now. And some people have CZs, which is another type of semi-automatic pistol. So there are areas though where there's bolt action rifles and pump shotguns. So I've
Mm,
seen everything like that, and I've also seen like World War II weapons on patrol in certain places of the
really?
world because that's the only thing they have available. Um, I would say from a safety and a um, ethics standpoint, the firearm should match the force necessary when dealing with the illegal activities. And I would also say that the weapons training should be parallel to that at all times. Um, I would also say that some areas probably need to. It's not at their discretion because of country laws and stuff like that, but they need better firearms because a bolt action is really not a safe thing to have if you're getting into it with a group of armed poachers.
I
Um,
would imagine.
yeah,
Wow.
um, and then in certain parts of the world too, it depends on the habitat you're in. So, what is your visual obstruction? Your visual, what are your visual covers? So it might be smart to have a shotgun first, and then your AR-15s backing you up, and the canine handlers still have their sidearms because their hands are going to be, on leash the whole time. Just
Yeah.
depends on what, when, and where.
The when you have altercations, do you confiscate the weapons from the poachers, and does that go to you, or does that go to the government? How does that work?
So any altercation or intervention with armed poachers is going to be treated the way that most folks would understand it to go. There's going to be an arrest. There's going to be a reading of rights. There's going to be a categorization of evidence, and then there's going to be confiscations, and those are going to be listed. Items confiscated and that act as um, actionable items against the poacher would be firearms and ammunition. And so those actually hold more of the prosecution weight than the illegal wildlife products, most cases. Uh,
Interesting.
so illegal firearms, silencers, and the uh, ammunition for those firearms when you are in the arrest procedures are very, very, very important to link them to the person, place, time, the whole crime scene, so that when you go to the prosecution side, you actually have a case that's got layered charges against somebody who's going to have multiple escape ways because of either law loopholes or a good attorney, or if there's syndicate, a good attorney who's going to get a bunch of things dropped once you hit case.
Hmm.
So, specifically in rhino and elephant poaching, you really need to like dot the I's and cross the T's and make sure you have all of that stuff categorized.
Man, that's incredible. I mean, it's not. I mean, you folks are basically a independent, like organized force, but it's just as organized as if you would be part of the government, if not probably more so.
Yeah, we've when we work with our national park, private game reserve, community partners, police, and investigation bodies, we annex right into the law structure that is for that space. But then
Mhm.
we ourselves, if it's an international member, they're going to be like the highest level advisor, utilizing like the highest training of crime scene investigation, firearms, arrest procedures. So they're going to be embedded in that team, but they're gonna take that team to a higher level of like overall operations, so that basically the case can stick. We need legal infrastructure to do the lifting so that poaching is not sustainable. Because one of the main reasons that wildlife poaching continues at such a rate is that laws and court realms or the judicial backgrounds are not sticking multiple cases on people. Like, so as a poacher,
Oh,
you can go and hit a certain area, get a slap on the wrist, and go back out the next weekend in a lot of locations. Or if you're a syndicate poacher, I mean, I like to refer to this. Imagine, arresting a mob member in the 1980s in New York City. He's going to walk. So you got to know how you're going to deal with all of those locations and places, and you want to make sure that you do the best you can. And extradition is also another thing that can be done for transnational wildlife trafficking, and that's also another game.
wow. I mean, feel free to not answer it, but I mean, what countries do you usually extradite to?
Well, the U.S. was extraditing regularly and prior to the current administration, and the European Union actually extradites, but not as commonly.
Interesting. Okay, so I want to get physically ready to do one of the anti-poaching trainings. What's a typical mileage that you would recommend I'd be good comfortable jogging at with gear?
So I would say be comfortable carrying 50 pounds and going 15 miles. On a walking rate, that would be base level comfort. If you're
Hmm.
talking about running, be comfortable running 10 to 15 miles with just the weight of like a hydration bladder on. Um, and then if you're looking at the other hard versions of our training, put yourself in discomfort when you're camping and sleeping, and don't have all of the gadgets and all the luxuries. Um, the GCF instructors are a wide mix of very seasoned and experienced anti-poaching rangers who've worked in multiple locations, most of which are from Southern Africa and East Africa, as well as our international team, which is a assembly of former special forces members from different countries.
Man,
And we've taken what is necessary in each part of Africa and Asia to be a ranger, utilize the ranger and the local knowledge, and then we have taken the mentality and the theory of training from cherry picking special locations of different um, high operating police units, military units, and utilizing the most up to date information for types of training. But we also layer that training. So you come in at a, we start you crawling before you start running. And so we do need to see you can crawl before you run. So we do start you on older platforms before you get to the newer platforms. So all that to say, we don't just trial you through physicality. We really work you in the mental realm.
I would
Um,
say that sounds way more mental and insane. Man,
yeah, it's I I say it with a smile because we have fun, and my biggest payoff is watching the men and women graduate at the end of ranger training. Honestly, it's like one of my favorite things. And then working with them for years to come and seeing them all in so many different places around Africa and Asia working and being like thriving and becoming the next instructors. Because if you come into the recruit category, you can work towards becoming a GCF instructor. And then we train instructors in different locations under different disciplines as well, so that there's training the trainer aspect after you've gone through kind of like your timeline of experience of becoming a field ranger or anti-poaching ranger, and then going towards the next version. So
wow.
yeah.
Okay, so the next anti-poaching ranger boot camp is on the screen, August 8th. Where does that take place?
So this is going to be in South Africa. Day zero is what we call Hell Day or Cut Day. We run two different versions of the introductory course. this year's version is Hell Days Day Zero. So you're going to be physically tested, mentally tested, and then we're going to be doing our version of a psych eval for, I guess, mental stamina and durability for what we're going to be getting into and expectations. If you don't make it on day one, you go back home that day. If you made it past day one, you just made it to day two, but you don't guarantee the day three. Um,
Man,
so you're in for that version. The other way we do it is so this version right now it's a little over 3 full weeks. Um, the other version we run is 5 weeks, and keep in mind this is the basic introduction to anti-poaching because we actually have a year-long mentorship an embedded training program where it's with cyclical advancing of trainings in different disciplines while you are also putting your foot time in the bush. So when you come in, you're just beginning once you go through this first training. Then you're actually traded as a ranger, and we're not running around and acting like drill instructors. We're all team members advancing each other's skills. But I like to define the first phase as military police style intake for what you can expect and what a boot camp can be like. And then the follow up to be like what it would be like to be in an advanced martial arts. So if you're going into Muay Thai or Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, the trials and tribulations are on you independently, but you're going to be introduced to other trained individuals in the environment and continually upgrade your skills so that you can elevate yourself to the next platform of team training that we do. And we do a lot of training, like a lot of layers, a lot of distance. We go from no skills teenager all the way to working specialist clandestine style operations in dangerous game environments with armed poachers. Um,
man.
so take you through the whole ladder.
Yeah. What do you see the weed out like in that first day or the first like week? What is that? Pretty
Uh,
substantial?
Substantial. I would say we give our reserve partners a lot of notice, and they test them before they come to us. So they're trying to make sure they give us solid candidates.
Mhm.
Because we've been so like proactive in that space. Generally, we have two fallouts out of 12 team members on an intake. Um, that said, it can really vary though on the location and the culture. Um,
Mhm.
so we would expect probably on this course at least 1 to 2 to fall off. We're going to have 16 on the next course, and I can expect that at least. But the homework's been given out and the forework expectation so that you don't just show up and like you're not
Yeah.
ready.
Yeah, you're not like walking from the mall to yeah,
Yeah.
the
You're like,
bush.
hey,
Got
what am I doing today? And then like we're up in there with our berets. We're like, you're going to listen. No, we're like,
it. It's not Clockwork Orange, yeah.
yeah. So yeah.
Okay, well, do you wanna answer this next question?
Which one is this one here? Okay. Crow Spider.
Yeah.
So rangers don't get paid a lot. I think that's a big misconception. A well-paid ranger in South Africa is going to be making between 550 and 750 US dollars a month, and they're probably going to have the offset of some accommodation covered. Um, and yeah, it's not a well-paid job. Unfortunately, that's the world of conservation. It's just not going to be competitive to any other type of industry, especially if you're coming from the outside of that country into the space. For the guys, it's a above minimum wage paid job, and they can go higher in it, but it's still not like a live fast and buy all your cars and buy multiple
Yeah.
houses and boats type lifestyle.
So you were saying that the people that have the really fancy, nice game lodges that are mainly trophy hunting lodges, they have training rangers that have leave something to be desired, but you'd probably assume they're probably getting the most payment, you know?
This is where it's hard. I have seen places who had the right team members and they did have good teams, but then
Mm,
I've seen a lot of trophy hunting funded reserves that don't have proper team setups and they don't have good pay for their rangers, and it seems like a lot of the money is going into one or two people's pockets instead of everybody else getting well paid. Um, some of the best paid Rangers teams that I know of are funded by nonprofits in
Oh,
partnership with
I'm
ownership of
sure.
expansion stuff. Um,
Instead of lodges or government, I guess. I mean, are there any government regulated rangers that would be in the area that you're working alongside?
yeah, we work with a lot of government rangers actually.
Okay.
We work with literally dozens of national parks. Um, and sadly, for the national parks, because governments regulate their annual budgets, they may have like the uniform and some of the baseline equipment, like vehicles and somewhere to sleep, but their payroll is usually not competitive with the private reserves, like as in like ones that we may also be working with in the nonprofit space. And their budget for anything outside of payroll is very limited. So things like
Mm,
training, extra equipment. So the national parks usually are in more trouble than the private game reserves in the staff capacity building realm
huh.
because the government is voting what each park gets for funding, but that like funds like vehicles, fuel, tires, uniforms, payroll.
Just keeping
And
the
then
lights on. Yeah.
yeah, just keeping the lights on. And then, so for us as a nonprofit, we always integrate the national parks into our training because we cross train everybody who's together. So, like a private reserve right here, and a nonprofit reserve right here, and a national park reserve right here, they all come into the training wing, and we all are working together on layered approaches to skills development where budgets fall short or aren't possible, and
Yeah.
then build into higher capacity.
Man, that's the way to go. Man, that's incredible.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess I'm going to start boosting my run up to about 10 miles just for fun every day.
Just for fun. Yeah, I'd love to see you on next year's course, man.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I'm actually doing a 175-mile backpacking trip next week, and I get
Oh,
back on August 5th, and I'm like, dude, if I could turn that around and fly back to South Africa after being there last month, my knees would be shot though. I don't think I'd do it after a 174-mile backpacking trip.
yeah, yeah. That would be quite the head start in taxing your system. But I'll say this: if you do feel like you're up for it, give me a shot because the crew's going to be busy, and if your arrival was on the 9th, we would count your 175-mile trek as your day zero.
Nah. I mean, I'm gonna be like eating fine. I'm gonna have like, yeah. I mean, it'll be fine. It's gonna be tough. Like, I'm not gonna lie, because we're probably gonna be between 7,000 and 10, maybe 11,000 feet at any given time. So it'll be altitude, but I mean, I'll be sleeping on all my cushy stuff that I'm backpacking with. So I don't
Love
know.
it.
I wouldn't consider it a day zero.
Okay, all right, fair.
Yeah.
Well, we have gone pretty long, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to drop them in, and we will respond there. Um, just as another kind of note keeping here, if anybody's interested in going, Anthony is leading our Costa Rica tour, eco tour in February, which is going to be in the Osa Peninsula. That information can be found on our website, Travel With Us Eco Tours. And then the biggest news is the Rhino Conservation Challenge is starting on World Ranger Day, which is
Yes.
July 31st. So start your teams for your chance to win a trip to South Africa or come out with the GCF team or learn how to take care of baby rhino orphans. So Rhino Conservation Challenge is basically on you to fundraise. You can create a team, but as long as you're the team leader leading the charge, you've got the chance at winning. And these are our
Cool.
key dates: World Ranger Day to World Rhino Day. Um, Happy to take any more questions you guys have.
On top of that, as you folks are writing your final questions, if you have any, I will be making a team. If you follow me, hit me up. You might be a part of my team. You could be a patron of my team, whatever it works. But I'm going to be maybe even doing a dollar per mile hike adventure
That's cool.
kind of deal for my trip. So regardless, you have ways to interact and make the difference.
Love it. All right, I'm not seeing any more questions.
You're good to
Dude,
go.
thank you for jumping on again. Uh, it's always fun to chat, and I'm excited to see where things go for the next one.
Thanks, Mike. Even if you want to do a debrief after your training in August, that'd be fun.
It will be fun. It's honestly, there's usually hundreds of stories that come out, many of which are funny. Uh, there's there's usually quite a few funny stories that come out of those. Um, I sometimes, between having a crew of like all these very highly trained instructors and some of the things that happen between them, and then what happens in the recruit world, and then what happens between the instructors and the recruits, there's usually a lot of comedy.
I love that. Well, I mean, heck, if we want, you can pop on here. I can get the audio from it, and we can make a podcast about it. You can keep it wherever
That
you
would be
want.
fun. That would be
Little
fun.
ridiculous poaching stories. Yeah.
Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
cool. Thanks, man. I'll catch you on the next one. And for everybody tuning in, thanks for tuning in today. If you guys have questions, you can always cruise through to the website. If you're looking to travel, there's a travel with us bar. If you're looking for more information, there's the blogs, and you can search by title. So I think today's most important one is how to become an anti-poaching ranger, uh, as well as what is the Rhino Conservation Challenge, and then understanding ecotours and professional development. So outside of that, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
Love it. Thank you, folks.